Hello and welcome to today's video. I was just about to start heading to bed and I was going to go wash my face, but I got this sudden inspiration to talk about the channel of structuring. If you're new here, my name is Jeannie. I'm a 6'2" self-projected projector. I have a defined head, ajna, throat, and G-center, and they're all connected straight down the middle channels, making me a pure individual. Now, I don't know if that's necessarily true, but I feel like I tend to really heavily rely on my channel of structuring. Like, I'm very, very aware of my channel of structuring. And recently I went through this experience and it made me think about other times when I've been through this as well, where and it doesn't happen very often. This is why I want to talk about it. But I was finding that it was work related. And we recently added a new person to the team. And things weren't working out as well as I had hoped. So I was starting to get really frustrated because I was really trying to make it work, but just the pieces weren't fitting in. And after a bit of soundboarding with my brother, who is my main my main person in the business, I realized why it wasn't working, why I couldn't structure the system. And it's this pattern of not having enough information, or whatever has kind of already been structured or what's wanting to be structured isn't sticking because there are other pieces of the system that they aren't cooperating, or they're missing is kind of the word that's coming to me now, because with the other person that we added, there's a lot of, I would describe it as inconsistency. It's not a constant piece. It's not one that I can depend on given the current structure that was in place. So I kept trying to rack my brain on how to make the system work, and it just wasn't, I couldn't come up with anything. So I was starting to get really frustrated because I couldn't structure the system and it wasn't getting results. It wasn't working. I felt like I was being held back. I felt I just did not feel I was feeling hella bitter because it wasn't working, and I kind of felt like I was being teamed up against. But then I'm like, no, wait, this is my business, I am a master at systems. I'm really good at structuring things. I know how to design them in a way where it's efficient, all the pieces are moving and working quite smoothly. I'm there's something else that's going on here, and why can't I put my finger on it? And it was that there wasn't enough information, but also the pieces, the people, to call them pieces, but in my mind I think it's of a system has different moving pieces, different people. It wasn't something had to be tweaked because my system wasn't holding. So if you have the channel of structuring, I'm curious to know and hear about your experience with this, because looking back, I could remember the times where I was really struggling to kind of piece things together, and I described it this way to my alpha twin, and I realized that I was struggling so much because the foundation wasn't there. The foundation that I wanted to use was one that I was familiar with, but it was a foundation that worked because all the people involved, or all the pieces involved, were constant. I knew them, I knew how they worked, I knew how they were going to behave up to a certain degree. I knew I can count on them. But in this new system, things aren't as consistent, they're not as constant, and that's what's messing up my system. And it's there isn't and I kept getting this visual of, like, well, I don't know much about building houses, but, if we keep it quite simple, it's like laying the foundation and then kind of setting up the four walls of the structure. And then that's how you build. You start building, right? Like, you have something to attach other things to. So that's why I was struggling so much, because like there wasn't enough information, or the information that I had wasn't enough, or wasn't really working for the system that I wanted to design. So in this work example, like we ended up trying a different format where, like, instead of having the person come and work here with us, it's going to be kind of more of a remote position, which I wasn't too thrilled about. But mainly, like, another thing I realized is that I was getting really triggered because I originally proposed it being a remote position because it would kind of be a little bit easier, and it got rejected. And now when the person is proposing the remote type of position, I got triggered because I'm like, that's what I originally suggested, and like feeling that rejection and feeling that bitterness of like being a projector and like putting something out there, and it's like if the person isn't ready to receive it, they won't, and then when the timing is better, it'll be kind of like their idea, but it's not, because like you originally thought about it, but everybody vetoed it. So it's been a very interesting experience. Like, in the moment, I was not happy. I was hella bitter. I was mad. Like, I got to the point where I'm like, forget this. Like, I don't need anybody to help me. I can run my business on my own, which I definitely can't. But I really wanted to find a way to be able to run the business on my own, because it's like, I know myself. Like, I know how I can count on myself. I know, like, I will show up and things like that. But after cooling off a bit, I felt like my incarnation cross flared up, all that alpha energy, kind of like a lot of a bit of like fifth line energy too, like wanting to burn things down. But eventually, like, I calmed down, and I think the gate, is it gate 36? I think it's gate 36. Alpha Twin keeps on bringing that one up. He's like, oh yeah, it's the gate of like, you're going to face chaos, but you also, chill out because you're going to know how to face it and whatnot. I'm like, I do not like this gate at all. It's definitely been tossing me around recently. But we could talk about that one in another video. So yeah, if you have the channel of structuring and you find yourself in a position where you're kind of having a really hard time structuring something, take a look at, like, do you have enough information? Because like another example that came to mind when I was doing this course in human design, the person that was training us would show us a chart, and they would tell us, like, tell me about this person, and I could not for the life of me pull the information because I didn't even know where to start. And from my experience or my perspective and what I was picking up on, I couldn't give a definitive answer because I didn't know. I wasn't talking to the person. I was just looking at their chart. And I will say this till like forever, like, defined centers can give you just as many issues, if not more, as undefined centers. It just depends. And you're not really going to know that unless you're talking to the person. At least that's how I experience human design, where it's like, for me, I did notice where there was a lot of conditioning in the defined centers, not, I want to say maybe even more than the undefined centers. So whenever they asked me, like, tell me about this person, like, I could not, like, I would go blank. But once they tweaked the system, and then they would include like a hypothetical scenario, oh, then that was like super, super easy. Like, I could pull the information from my brain and very easily know, like, okay, what guidance does this person need? So do you have enough information? the quality of information? Do you have the right kind of information? And taking a look at like the other pieces or the other people in the system that you're trying to design or look at. Yeah, because like the other thing that I really became aware of this time around is how like I kept attributing like the system's not working because I'm doing something wrong. And it wasn't that at all. It's just sometimes, you know, what it could also feel like is like there's too much information. So it's kind of like this weird feeling of there's so much information, you don't know what pieces to pull to start creating the foundation and like those four walls and to start building and creating from there. Other times it could feel like there isn't enough information. So it's like you learn to feel into it. And again, like this is, I'm kind of thinking of like how to word this because it might not apply for everyone. I think it especially applies for me being that like I'm self-projected and my center of authority is at G center. And I also, like another really big thing that I noticed this time around is that I was giving a lot of my power away by trying to be way too accommodating to the other people involved in the business and essentially like people pleasing. And that's another reason why I was really struggling. So when I was like getting fed up of everything, of like trying to accommodate everyone to the best, like the most efficient way possible, I realized like, wait, this is my freaking business. Like, why am I doing this? And I felt like that G center like really come back online where it's like, no, what do I want? How do I want to structure this? Like, what do I need? What does my business need? And not from like an ego perspective. Because like, the G center has to do with love, direction, and self. So when I find myself, and this is like a really big pattern that like I really feel like I'm being called to like shift and let go of this, it's like I was so conditioned to give my power away, to look to external authority figures, mom being a big one, that I'm still learning to see myself as my biggest authority. And just saying that, sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, like what? You know? But I mean, it's the conditioning and like childhood trauma and all that. But there's so many thoughts coming to my head right now. Like that whole concept of like, I grew up like in a very churchy environment. So I feel like there's a lot of fear instilled on me of like, oh, if you rely on yourself or if you trust yourself, like that, be careful because like that's not safe. So what I'm actually learning now is that no, like my G center, it's there for a reason. And if it's like the center of my authority, it's like, what direction do I feel guided, divinely guided, nudged to going towards, and trusting that. And then it's kind of like that's the hub, that's the foundation. And then I could start building around that. And if the people that are there to support me don't fit in, then we either need to find you something else to do or find somebody else and not feel undefined solar plexus, feel transferred motivation guilt. So it's been very interesting seeing how like human design has been playing into like this particular area, especially with the like channel structuring, where I think like it's one of my strongest channels and I hardly ever have issues with it. But this time, whereas like really like I could not for the life of me design the system, I couldn't understand why, but those were some of the reasons. So I'm gonna pause there for now. I'd love to hear your experiences with the channel of structuring in this sense. Like if you feel like you relate to this or you resonate with this, I'd love to hear, or if this helped, If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments section down below, and maybe I'll do a part 2 to this. But okay, that's it for tonight. My battery is dying and I'm gonna go wash my face and head to bed. So thank you for being here. If you'd like more content, or if you'd like to follow along on the journey, hit that subscribe button. And you can also find me on Instagram. My handle is @GinaSalcedo. There and below and on my website you can find more information on different ways of working with me. And okay, I think I got everything. It's been a minute since I've done a video, so kind of forgot my structure. But okay, I'm off. I hope y'all are having a wonderful day, and I'll talk to y'all later.